The story this young man tells about himself is remarkable because it illustrates that God is still revealing himself today to people who appear to us to be sworn enemies of anything to do with religion, just as he revealed himself to Saul on that dusty road to Damascus. David was a punk rocker whose main ingredients in life were drugs, sex and rock and roll, with a liberal sprinkling of violence thrown in for good measure. A rebel from a very young age, David was hell-bent on a life of hatred towards others and a total disregard for authority. Even without hallucinatory drugs, it's difficult to imagine what was going on inside his head. To many, it must have seemed impossible that this young man could ever have become a happily married homeowner with a good job and regular income to support his wife and family. But then, God moves in mysterious ways.
I had a really happy childhood up until I was about 13. I lived in a cottage in the country and I was really happy, and I couldn't have wanted for nothing more. And suddenly my father developed arthritis, and we had to move, and we had to move in a council house, and that meant we have to move from where I was really happy. And we moved, and as soon as we moved, that felt like all hell had been let loose. I just didn't get on at school. I started playing truant, letting stink bombs off in class, fighting with the teachers, and my life was really a mess. I used to fight with the boys at school. I used to have the whole school after me, and I became really nervous about everything, and I never ever thought that I'd get away from that school. That was really so horrible. That was like hell. And one day, I remember my grandfather died, and my father came calling upstairs that my grandfather had died, and just so happens about two or 3 months after that I was moved over to my grandmother, to live with my grandmother. And when we moved, I decided that I wasn't going to let anybody walk all over me again. I was no longer going to let anybody come after me or anything. I just had enough of everybody, and I became really hard. And I carried on playing truant and mucking about in class. I started drinking when I was 15, and my life really started to go downhill. I lost a lot of my mates through drinking, and by the time I'd left school, I really had a bad drink problem. I was drinking bottles of Cinzano and anything I could get my hands on, and I left school and I started. I passed my test, my car test, and I used to still go out drinking and driving. I'd done it right up until I became a Christian, and I could have killed people. I really could, you know, and I was lucky to be alive. I smashed 2 or 3 of my own cars up, ripped them off through drinking and driving, and sometimes I had people in the car with me, and other times I'd smash other people's cars up, knock brick walls down, all sorts of things. And you know, and my friends at this time, I knew that all my friends, whenever I had a real problem, if I tried to talk to anybody, they didn't understand. They didn't understand what I was going through or anything, and so they just used to give me a pint of beer, and well, they just didn't understand, didn't want to know about my problems. They just laugh it off. And I used to laugh it off as well. And the punk scene came out. I can remember sitting in a nightclub one night, and Pretty Vacant came on, and that was a music that I could really relate to. It was just the way I felt. I was rebellious. I hated everybody. I hated everything. And it was just about going after women and violence and music and boozing, which were the most important things in my life at the time. And I got in the punk scene. I had my hair done all spiky, all different colours. I bought all the bondage clothes and all sorts. But you know, I used to get home after being to the gigs and things. I started getting into drugs at this time, cannabis and speed. And I used to get home after being out with my mates in these punk gigs, and I used to lay in my bed and I used to think, whatever is this all about? There must be something more in life than this. And life was just so empty. I just put on a big front when I went out with my mates. That was just a bit, I was conning everybody. I was, you know, just trying to be a big man, but underneath it all I was empty and lost. And I didn't have anybody who I could share my problems with. I started living with this girl, and I really thought a lot of her. I started living with her, but things just didn't work out, and I really trusted her, and I really tried to show my feelings to her, but she just slapped it all back in my face. And gradually, anyway, the relationship finished, didn't it? And that's where I met Joanne. That was an absolutely terrible relationship. That was practically non-existent, wasn't it?
Yeah, and yeah, when I met, well, I'd known David for some time, but when we really started going out together, you know, it was a really, well, you couldn't really call it a relationship, because it just got to be just a physical sort of relationship, but I just couldn't, I was just so crazy about him. I just couldn't, there was nobody else for me, you know. I just knew that he was the one that I wanted to marry, if you like. Though that never crossed my mind, but I just knew that he was the one for me. And he used to be so bad. He used to say, "Oh, I'll meet you in the pub at 7:30," and I'd sort of be waiting, you know, and he'd stroll with another woman on his arm, or, you know, and I'd sort of feel like an idiot. So I was always sort of buying his drinks, buying his cigarettes, but I used to buy his clothes, you know, anything to get him to trust me, because I felt that, you know, if he'd only trust me and sort of let me try and help him, you know, then that we could make something of a relationship together. But he never would, you know. He was so hard, and, you know, and we used to fight, you know, really scrap if he got drunk, you know. And I was sort of becoming a nervous wreck through it, you know, because I was just worrying all the time, you know. And I'd been in drugs before, and I'd always sort of messed around with drugs, but when I got to going out with David, then because he was in drugs, and because I wanted to sort of, I don't know, get something going with him, really, I went more for drugs again, and on a speed and LSD and all, anything really, but I'd never touch heroin. And you know, anything to get him to notice me, you know, because I never felt that, you know, he used to be sort of all around these other people, around these other women, and you know, I used to do just anything to get his attention.
I was on the dole at this time. I got a letter from the job centre, didn't I? Going to Mr. Alan Pimlott about a job, and I found out that he was a Christian. I decided I didn't want to be a Christian at a very young age. Well, when I was 15, I decided I didn't want to be a Christian because of what I'd seen in my village. So-called Christians going to church and looking like they'd been to a funeral. And I decided I didn't want anything to do with it. But I found out that this man was a Christian. And at this time, Joanne was living with Christians. Whenever I used to go out on drugs up Norwich, I'd bump into Christians. In the end, after seeing that man for the interview, I got the job there, so that meant I had a Christian boss. The chap I was working with was a Christian, and my grandmother was a Christian, and she was telling me that Jesus was coming soon. and there's these Christians everywhere, and I thought they were after me. And that was terrible. I couldn't go anywhere without a Christian being somewhere. And I really started to start to see if there must be something more in life. My life was so empty. I really wanted to show my feelings towards Joanne, but I couldn't. I really wanted to. I really knew she was the one for me, but I daren't show my feelings because I didn't want to get hurt. And I remember one night just sitting in the Wild Man, in the Black Swan rather, in Norwich. Joanne wasn't with me that night. I was with my mates and we'd been taking drugs, and the 10 o'clock news come on, and I didn't hear things, but it sounded like an atom bomb has just gone off in such and such a place. I thought it's what it sounded like, and I suddenly just come to my sense, and I thought, well, if that's the case, where do I go? And I just suddenly realised that I was lost, and I don't know, I can't explain it. And I walked out of that pub with my mates intending to go to a nightclub, and we walked down the road past the festival house going towards the Magdalen Street, and it just seemed like my whole life was passing before me, like someone was showing me a film of my life. How I'd been horrible to my mother, continually swearing at her and making her a nervous wreck. How I'd been horrible to Joanne and made her life a mess. The untold girls and my mates who I'd hurt. And my father, who used to wait up till 4 o'clock in the morning out on the road for me, wondering if I'd come home in my car. And I could see all this just passing before me, you know, and I just realised that I just felt so bad about everything. And I just realised I was lost, and I walked down Magdalen Street with my mates, and we came to the flyover, and my mates had never done it before, and my mates said, come on, we'll go down to the Jackyard, we'll be getting high soon, let's go down and have a good time. And I remember just stopping just under the flyover and saying, no, I don't want to know anymore. I said, I don't want to know, I want to go home. And I just had enough. I'd come to the end of myself, and I just didn't want to know. I could see the whole thing was just false. You know, it was a big front, everything. And I walked down, I turned left at the flyover and walked down this little alleyway, and I just suddenly realised that there was a devil trying to destroy me. I'd had overdoses on drugs before, I'd had so many car accidents, I'd been beat up a lot, and I just realised that somebody was trying to destroy me, and I knew it was a devil. I knew that I just came to the conclusion that there was a devil. And I thought to myself, if there's a devil, then there must be a God. And I lifted my hands in the air, and I just cried out to the Lord with all my heart. I didn't know anything about God. I just said, Lord, if there's a God, help me. I lifted my hands and cried that out. And as soon as I'd done it, peace just flooded my soul. I felt that somebody was talking to me, and I now know that was Jesus. After that experience along that road, my life just started to change. My desire for drugs just went, my desire for smoking went, and my desire for drink went as well. And I suddenly started to get a desire to court Joanne properly, and things really started to change in a miraculous way. We started to really get on with each other, and you know, that we found, since we've submitted our life to the Lord Jesus and given Him our lives, you know, that things have been just wonderful. They really have. All my old desires and things are gone, and I'm just happy. I've got a lovely wife, a lovely baby boy, ain't we? Beautiful, he really is, and we're just so happy. I've got peace in my heart, which is the main thing, you know, and people just running around everywhere looking for peace, and I found it by just crying out to God. That's just so wonderful. Just that God is the answer.